Good afternoon, I'm Vashan Brown with the Midday News. A special welcome if you're watching on onespotmedia.com. People's National Party President Dr. Peter Phillips has announced his resignation. Dr. Phillips announced he was stepping away from the leadership position a short while ago at a media briefing at the PNP headquarters. However, it will not be with immediate effect.
This is well recognized. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As is now recognized, the results of the general elections held yesterday, September 3rd, have been very unfavorable to the People's National Party. As in all undertakings such as this, the ultimate responsibility must rest with the leader of the party. Accordingly, I consider it my duty to demit office as president of the party, and I have written to the chairman of the People's National Party to ask that the National Executive Council and the executive of the party make the necessary arrangements as soon as is practicable to elect a new leader of the party. I would like to thank all those who voted yesterday for the People's National Party. I would also like to thank all those who worked on the campaign. Many of them, indeed all of them, went way beyond the call of duty to support the People's National Party's efforts in the field. The party has many lessons to learn from the experience. I expect that the executive will shortly establish a review committee to analyze the causes of the defeat and to chart a path for rebuilding. I'd like to say in closing that I have had, over these past 4 decades, a tremendous opportunity to serve my country and my party in giving public service. And I relish this and certainly will do all I can to ensure a smooth transition of the leadership of the party and a swift rebuilding of the People's National Party so that it can continue to fulfill its historic mission on behalf of the people of Jamaica. Thank you very much.
Dr. Peter Phillips there announcing that he will demit office as president of the People's National Party. This follows the landslide victory for the Jamaica Labour Party in yesterday's general election. Now the JLP won 49 seats and the PNP 14 seats. You also heard Dr. Phillips there speaking about a review committee to assess the cause for the PNP's loss. Meanwhile, PNP President Dr. Peter Phillips was a no-show at the party headquarters last night. Party officials, however, put on a brave face to address the media. O'Shane Masters reports.
Started coming in that disappointed supporters who had converged at the PNP party headquarters started to leave. The party lost some key seats which left officials stunned. Central Kingston, which was once held by Michael Mandy, and Eastern Westmoreland, where P.J. Patterson served as MP up to his retirement, are among those now in the JLP column. So, what went wrong? The party's co-campaign chairman, Philip Paulwell, says the party will have an assessment in the coming days.
No, listen, all of us will have to accept full responsibility. I, as director, co-director, I have to take full responsibility for my own role in this campaign. So we're not going to start by pointing fingers, by issuing blame. I think there's enough for all of us to accept and to recognize that we have to come better.
Prior to the results, the party was confident that its wealthy plan would have connected with the electorate.
No, I don't think we can blame the manifesto. I thought we had a very good manifesto. Perhaps we weren't able to expound, to get it out there sufficiently. And again, these are things that we're going to have to review, and we're going to be able to give you a far more fulsome position as to the reasons for this severe loss tonight.
With PNP presidential hopeful Peter Bunting now without a seat, there's been much talk about who will succeed Dr. Peter Phillips when he steps down as party leader. The issue was put to Mr. Paulwell.
Far too premature to even start to contemplate that. I think we have to take stock, we have to come together, and we have to make those decisions collectively.
Machine Masters, TVJ News.
And having received a second mandate from the people, Prime Minister Andrew Holness will now turn his attention to crafting a new cabinet. Mr. Holness was speaking to reporters last night after the JLP's 49-seat victory over the PNP.
So the first thing I'm going to do, starting tonight, is to craft a cabinet that can effectively fulfill expectations and at the same time be competent in its delivery. So I have a wider deck to choose from, and so I'm going to think very carefully on that.
Mr. Holness also outlined some of the criteria for selection.
The first thing is I have to look for competence. That's number one, people who can manage. The second thing I'm going to be looking for, because I believe that going into this second term is for persons who are clear in their vision and have a vision that aligns with what the government wants to do. Governments get sidetracked and distracted when you don't have alignment on the vision. People are going in this way, people are going in that way, so I must be clear that everyone understands that there are some things that are don'ts. I think that is where I'll be looking at. So we want to be very clear about ensuring the integrity and probity of the government.
And with a commanding majority in the House of Representatives, Mr. Holness is warning members of his administration not to be arrogant.
It must never be that the government that emerges from this victory takes on any characteristics of arrogance, of inhumility. It must never be that the government that emerges from this victory takes the people for granted in any way.
Now, as you know, the victory means that the JLP will retain the government. It's the first time the party is winning back-to-back elections in more than 50 years. Now, the last time the JLP won consecutive polls was in the 1962 and 1967 general elections. We now take a break on the Midday News, but please stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Continuing the news now. Assistant Lecturer of Public Policy in the Department of Government at the University of the West Indies, Damian Gordon, says the People's National Party, PNP, should respond immediately to issues the party failed to acknowledge. His comment comes following yesterday's landslide victory by the JLP.
Last night, the Jamaica Labour Party, JLP, won the general election with 49 seats to the People's National Party. The JLP's landslide victory has highlighted some key areas which some critics believe should be addressed by the PNP. Assistant Lecturer of Public Policy in the Department of Government at the University of the West Indies Mona campus, Damian Gordon, says the Don Anderson polls over the last 4 years showed that JLP leader Andrew Holness had a more favorable rating than PNP President Dr. Peter Phillips.
Last night's result, maybe not to the extent that some of us are anticipating, was consistent with the polling data that has been generated since 2016, which has consistently shown a wide favorability gap between the People's National Party and the leaders, and between the People's National Party and the Jamaica Labour Party, and also the leadership of both political parties.
He says previous polls also revealed two main issues which the PNP ignored.
The Jamaica Labour Party was consistently seen as being better at governing, and the JLP's leadership was also seen as being more attractive. I'm not sure the People's National Party responded to those issues forcefully, And I think that every opportunity that the party got to respond to some of these issues, the party to reform and renew the party squandered those opportunities. And I think the party paid dearly.
Westmoreland was known as a PNP stronghold. However, the PNP lost all 3 seats in the parish. Mr. Gordon argues that this could not have been as a result of the impact of COVID-19 and a lower voter turnout. He believes there are other factors responsible and the PNP must respond.
But clearly there are other issues at play. There seems to be a widespread disaffection, even among persons who identify themselves as PNP supporters, with the party. The party has to respond. Jamaican politics is leader-centric. People will vote for a political party based on the perception of the leader. And equally, a good leader will help candidates, and a weak leader or an unpopular leader may also bring down candidates. So that has to be answered immediately. The leadership question has to be settled immediately.
Herman Green, TVJ News.
Meanwhile, was the fear of COVID-19 a major contributing factor to the turnout in the polls? Pollster Don Anderson does not believe so. He says based on the voter turnout percentage from the EOJ, it was fairly good.
The turnout seems to be fairly good, and therefore, there's no basis on which we can scientifically assess the extent of the COVID factor. The weather was good, so that's not something anybody can speak to. The weather was good all day. So it's difficult to assess, except to say that nationally, there's total dissatisfaction with the People's National Party and what has taken place. And I think this really must be the single, you're going to break it down some more, but this is the single most important factor that one can ascribe to this massive defeat of the People's National Party.
Now, the voter turnout for yesterday's general election was roughly 37%. In 2016, at the end of that general election, the turnout was roughly 48%. Political commentator and hotline host Clive Mullings says it's more likely that the shadow cabinet will have to be formed from the Senate. He says this is based on a number of high-profile candidates which lost their seats in the general elections yesterday.
Shadow cabinet is going to be important, so you have to have some standing. Being in the Senate affords you some standing in that regard because you have a national profile and you can speak to legislation. I believe, though, that the shadow cabinet is one which will have to position itself in terms of looking very carefully at how government is acting out on behalf of the people. They have to stand in the breach because they now will be able to provide an opportunity and a platform for the country to say, well, yes, we do have an alternative.
Mr. Mullings, however, noted that while the PNP camp will be quiet for quite some time, it should not be for long. He says the victory also showed that some disunity is still lingering over the party.
This is where you need someone who can say, listen, no, it is deeper than that. We have been here before, we can do it better, we have to swallow our pride. And what it also means that those who are satisfied in terms of one side as against the other, and I speak to it, number of persons who have retained their seats supported Phillips. They're not part of the support for Bunting. They now have to look and say, listen, put that aside. Who can now galvanize and position the party to go forward? And that is not easy to do, especially if politicians are concerned, but they must do it.
And former Senator Floyd Morris says the opposition People's National Party will now have to focus its energy on getting the right people in the Senate. He says it should be a combination of both experience and youth.
Coming into the Senate, you have to read the legislation so that you are able to participate in the debate and contribute meaningfully to the debate. So there's gonna have to be a delicate balance of experience and youth coming into the Senate to make sure that we mount a successful opposition in the upper house.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Andrew Holness has signaled that new measures are coming to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic after further discussions with technical teams from the Health Ministry.
And we will look at the situation, we will look at the impact of the nomination day, the impact of the election day. We look at the numbers. We are heading into a different phase of the pandemic, and I think Jamaica needs to understand that. We're going to head into a new phase of how we manage COVID. Still, the mission is to protect lives so that people can enjoy their livelihoods. So it's, as I said, a little bit premature to announce what we're going to be doing, but yes, the country can rest assured that there will be new measures in place.
Now, the country's death toll from the coronavirus increased to 29 on Thursday. 74 new COVID-19 cases were also recorded, pushing the total to 2,896. And that's the Midday News. I'm Vashon Brown. Don't forget to join us at 7 for Primetime News Package. On behalf of the news, sports and production teams, have a good afternoon and have a great weekend.